¿Qué pasa to the pack? It is Pack here,
aka your mama's best friend.
and in today's video I want to cover the all-time teams that I believe need to be NBA 2K21 next generation. See, there are already the all-time teams, so every single team's greatest players of all time, and they also have the decade team, which is like the best 80s players, 70s players, 90s, and etc. And what I wanted to cover is that there's more all-time teams I think that need to be added, and now that the next generation is coming in less than a month away, almost like 3 weeks away, I want some teams to be added. I think they're really missing out on some of these opportunities that they could really, like focus on, and I want to cover that in today's video. But before this video starts, so be an OG, join the pack, and subscribe. Help me get to 300,000 subscribers. Okay. So the first all-time team that I want to cover is an all-time WNBA team. Listen to me when I say this, I had no problem with them adding WNBA teams in the first place. I was even one of the people who said they need to, and then they're already hinting that WNBA players are going to be added, or not WNBA players, but women players are going to be able to be made in Park next generation. That's like the big hint that they're doing it, which I'm cool with. But if you want people to play with the WNBA like players and females, a lot of people don't know who they really are because, as you all know, not a lot of people watch the WNBA.
Hey, watch your mouth, woman!
It is not as popular as the NBA. So how to get this popular and more people to pay attention to it is get the GOATs of all the WNBA, put them on one team, and let people try them out and play with them. I think that'd be the best idea if you're getting the GOATs of the GOATs, right? And just doing crazy moves with all of them, even dunking with some of them, like for example, Brittany Griner. I think that would get a lot more people interested in the WNBA and a lot more people to try the teams out. You could add people like Lisa Leslie, Taurasi, Sue Bird, even Becky Hammond if you really wanted to, Tina Thompson. There was some great players, Candace Parker, in all-time women's history. And if you add them all into one team and see how they fare up against maybe like the Knicks or something, that'd be cool to see. In my opinion, I'd be cool with that. And number 2 on this list is an all-time college team. So I have 2 ideas or even 3 ideas for this. The first thing is, let's remind everybody that in 2K17 they had a DLC. Yeah, they had DLC in 2K. Imagine that. Where you could have all-time colleges and their all-time players. So let's say you got Kentucky, you had all-time players from Kentucky. Duke, all-time players from Duke. UConn, all-time players from UConn, and etc. and etc. and etc. You had Allen Iverson in Georgetown and stuff like that. Like if you had these big teams like North Carolina, and MJ would be on North Carolina, that would be really interesting to see and to try that. And they've already had this before, so why not add it back into the game? But let's say they don't want to do that because they think maybe that's just too much work. Why not add just all-time college players ever, like the greatest college players of all time? Players like Kareem, who we know was amazing throughout his entire career, or Bill Russell, even Christian Laettner. You also have Pistol Pete, Bill Russell. You can even add Tom Gola, players like MJ, Tyler Hansborough, JJ Redick. You could add players that maybe not were greats in the NBA or just they were just okay in the NBA, but they were so good in college they have to be on this all-time team. You can double down on that and do a high school all-time team. Players like Kareem, who were also amazing in high school. LeBron, who was considered basically like the GOAT of high school. Everyone loved him in high school. Kobe was so good. Dr. J, or players that weren't as known like Sebastian Telfair, or players that were okay in the NBA either because of injuries or stuff, but like were great in high school like Greg Oden. You could do these kind of teams and it would just add on to 2K, add on to these teams, and it would be awesome. And number 3 is missing all-time teams. My personal opinion is that if you're going to celebrate the greatest teams or all the teams in NBA history and have all-time teams for them, why are we ignoring all the teams in NBA history? There are some teams that only played a couple seasons or even almost 10 seasons and they're gone from the NBA, never again, but they were in the NBA. Why aren't we celebrating them? And all those great players are basically forgotten about. I know that there's not really a lot of teams that played a lot of seasons that are gone. Most of the teams that were famous or popular in the NBA are still here or different versions of it, like the Supersonics or now the OKC. But let's be real, why is OKC and Supersonics the same? They should have their own all-time teams. At least that's my opinion. So you could have the Supersonics with Dennis Johnson and etc., or I guess even KD, and then you can have the OKC with also KD, but you have James Harden, Westbrook, etc. And then you have the Charlotte Bobcats, who were its own kind of team at a time. You could have Gerald Wallace, Emeka Okafor, Raymond Felton on the Bobcats all-time team. And then finally, what about the teams that were removed from NBA history, like the Washington Capitals? When obviously this was like the 50s, so no one really knows about that, but Bob Fierick or Fred Scolari. They were really successful players in the NBA that are kind of forgotten about because their team's gone. What about the Baltimore Bullets? They were a team that also existed for 9 seasons, had Buddy Jeanette, who was a great player for them for a long time. They're basically removed from NBA history, but they were legit NBA teams. I feel that you can make all-time teams with them. I feel that you should. At number 4 on this list is all-time Euro teams. There's actually so many different ways that you could do this one, but I do think this one needs to be added as well. When I say Euro teams, you could start off with basically just the greatest all-time European players or all-time international players on the one team. Like you could do that. Or how about the all-time players in a specific league? So you have the Euro League, you have the Chinese Basketball Association, I think, or league, you have the Australian League. There's a bunch of leagues out there. Why don't you have all-time teams for all these basketball leagues? They used to have Euro League teams. You could still do a version of that with the all-time. The reason why the EuroLeague teams didn't work is because there were so many 2K generic players or players that nobody even knew. But if you get the greatest players of all time, like in the CBA, when you have Stephon Marbury and Lance Stevenson in the CBA, for example, that'd be really cool. For EuroLeague, you could have people like Luka Doncic and other people who were great, or you can do the specific teams, all-time teams, like Real Madrid's all-time team, Barcelona's all-time team. I know that Russia and Turkey have their own teams, and even Israel, I know, have their, like Tel Aviv have their own team. So you can get the greatest players of all time in these specific teams and put them into one roster. And I think this will get people more excited about all-time teams or European teams and stuff like that. Maybe in the Australian League, you could have LaMelo Ball. I mean, I'm just saying these are things that we can focus on, and that'd be cool. And finally, at number 5, the one that I think has to be next generation is the all-time national teams. This is the only one I really, really, really want because, okay, there's 2 reasons. First, the Olympics are next year, which is when basketball is going to be in the Olympics, and we always celebrate the national teams, and when they play against each other, obviously USA usually wins, but there's other teams that have won before, and there have been great players in national teams. We should not only have the specific teams. For example, they had Australia in 2K17, I believe, so they had the Australian team, but we could have all-time national teams. So not only the current Australian team, we could have the greatest Australian players of all time in one team, or the greatest Canadian players of all time in one team. You could have like Steve Nash, for example, in the Canadian team with Jamal Murray, with Andrew Wiggins, with maybe even Anthony Bennett and players like that. You could have the all-time Chinese team, which you have Yao Ming, or the Japanese team where you have Rui Hachimura right now. I just think there's so many teams that could be made, like Germany with Dennis Schroeder and Dirk, you know, for example, or Serbia would be a raw team. Like there's so many teams you can make because there were so many good national teams. If you put all their talent all time, that yes, the current USA team would almost beat anybody for the most part. But if you get the all-time teams and put them against the current NBA teams, who knows, maybe some of these countries were really good all-time talent-wise and could keep up. And another thing is that over time, teams are getting better and better. And I do think that international teams are getting better than ever, and it's getting closer than ever. Like, we did see USA get dropped off in the FIBA World Cup. However, they also didn't have their like real USA team, but still, Spain is really good. Greece has Giannis and all the other Antetokounmpos with also Nick Calathis. Like there are really good teams out there internationally, and I think they need to be added into 2K. That's just my opinion. But what do you guys think about this list? Did I miss anything? Leave it in the comments below. And if you like this channel, give it a sub, and I'll see you guys next time.